Hello, everybody. I'm Walter. I'm the Dutch mentor. Welcome back to the Smart Performance Podcast. S for self-care, M for mindful growth, A for adaptive learning, R for rhythmic operation, T for building a thriving community, and P for performance, of course. Well, listen, we finally got to the topic. I don't think we have really directly addressed it yet the whole entire time, but there is nothing more important than if you want to have a high output relationship or partnership, there needs to be trust. So Bianca, all the way from London, via Germany, I believe, is joining us this morning to talk about trust. Bianca, thank you very much for joining the podcast and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Walter. I always love an opportunity to talk about building trust. So I learned this when I was a stock market analyst at Morgan Stanley, where it was really, really important to build trust really quickly with investors who by default have to be skeptical, right, to do a good job. So I'm really excited to be sharing some of my top tips with your audience today.
Well, that is good. Yeah, and I would say before I give my money to somebody, there needs to be not only a fiduciary relationship, but a trust relationship. And how can I do that in just a matter of, is it the smile? Is it the eyes? Is it the combination between smiling with your eye in the corner of your mouth? Tell us, how do you go about doing that? And what is the importance of it?
Yes, absolutely. So obviously you need to trust somebody before you do business with them. That's, the name of the game. You're not going to give your money to somebody who you don't trust to be doing something decent with the money, right? To actually deliver on the contract that you have with him or her. So what you do when you meet somebody new is you want to create that trust immediately, but you also want to create credibility. So it's important to have the right level of smile. If you run around with the biggest smile on the planet, as in Mickey Mouse in Disneyland, then people might not trust you because you're just too happy. You're maybe too enthusiastic. And the way I like to explain this to people, imagine you're a TV channel or you're a TV station, and there's lots of different channels that you can be sending yourself on. At one end of the spectrum, there's a very serious channels like BBC News or CNN News for you guys in the US. And at the end of the spectrum, the opposite end of the spectrum is Disney Channel. So when you meet somebody in a business situation or in a private situation, you want to make sure that you're sending yourself on the correct channel right at the beginning. If you're too much Disney Channel in a professional setting, then that might not be appropriate for that specific professional setting, and people may rank you down on credibility and trust straight away. Whereas if you're too BBC News or too much CNN News, say with a child, for example, in a personal setting, the child might run away because you're too scary. So it's important to fine-tune your channel right from the beginning and know who you have to know your audience to then know which channel you're going to be sending yourself on.
I love that analogy, and remember that we're talking, here emerging leaders across all of the industries. Of course, I work, a lot of with people in healthcare. Trust between you and your patient, between the doctor and the nurse, all these things all count for the same thing. Is exactly the same. And the reason why I always say is that people who smile too much, they usually only smile with their mouth. They don't have a genuine smile. And the way to see if somebody is genuinely smiling, in other words, they truly are interested in you, truly engaged with you, is when you see the corner of the eyes and the corner of the mouth smile. It's a little CIA insight for you. That's how you can tell people tell you the truth, or they're just giving you a bunch of baloney. But anyhow, go back to focus what your expertise is. So how would you say, because I relate this to building a personal brand, right?
Mhm.
You need to represent your own brand, no different than Nike's, Adidas, or anything. So how does somebody go about doing that to become more self-aware of how to establish trust and how to present themselves to a client, to a patient, to a person that they're speaking to?
Absolutely. So you have to be mindful about how you want to be perceived by others. So I wouldn't leave anything to chance in these situations. If you're a doctor, for example, the sheer fact that you probably meet the person in a hospital already helps you build credibility, because if I'm a patient, I go to hospital, the doctor turns up, I'm not going to ask the doctor for all of their qualifications and certificates, right? I have enough trust to believe that this doctor is hopefully qualified enough to be a doctor in a hospital, not some crazy imposter who is having a bit of a laugh with me. So the same is true in business contexts as well, where, say, for example, I was a stockbroker, I was working for Morgan Stanley. when investors would meet me as the person who comes from Morgan Stanley, I already have a certain level of credibility with the investor, because Morgan Stanley doesn't just recruit anybody, and they don't just allow anybody to go and see an investor. Before I write my report and publish it, and it gets sent out to 3,000 people, professional investors, there's a series of loops that I have to jump through to Morgan Stanley's own quality control training for me, and investment committees that I have to pass before my report goes out to the client. That said, of course, the client will have very high expectations towards me, just like a patient will have very high expectations to, let's say, a knee surgeon that they meet in hospital, right? Much higher expectation than their GP. So somebody who would have met me would have had much higher expectations towards me about my topic than, say, an IFA, an independent financial advisor, who advises on everything, is not a specialist on what I would have been a specialist on. So that said, I obviously have to strike the balance right between showing my expertise and also making sure that I give my client what it is that they need, because they only need something very specific in that particular moment. So I would always ask all my meetings, or start all my meetings with a question to find out more about who it is that I'm meeting. So say the doctor asks you in a hospital, where's it hurting, for example. I would ask my clients when I meet them, tell me more about your investment philosophy, so that I can target my answers to what you need from me. And people love that. And you'd be surprised how many people don't target their message to their audience. And then there is no rapport, there's no connection, and the wall goes up.
So I refer to that as inward versus outward thinking, right? It is that the ego, pride, driven person will make it about themselves. So the inward, right? They will come with, look at my title, look at my credentials, rather than being outward by showing deep interest to what the client, the patient, might say. The other thing I always laugh about it is that, so yeah, we have pre-established credentials by calling you doctor, or by calling you nurse, or you have an RN or an MD or an MBA behind your name. But people also forget that, listen, the guy or girl who from the top of the class is an MBA, but a girl on the bottom of the class who barely passed also has an MBA, right? Or an MD behind you. So it is a combination of a bunch of factors. I think today, you would almost assume, although you have to be careful with assumptions, that the client, your client, the patient, already has done research because information is so readily available. So building trust in the digital format. So now you have a well established on how I can go in with an open-ended question to start building that dialogue. But how can I start building trust with that person even before I speak with them in a digital format?
Yeah, so before you speak with a person the first time, they would already have researched you online in today's day and age, right? So in my previous role as a stockbroker, they would have read some of my reports, or they would have watched some of my videos to get an idea about what my view is of the world, and whether I can help them. They would have already figured that out. So if you want to actively manage your personal brand, as in how people perceive you before you even enter the room, you want to be very mindful about what you put out there. So in a way, you want to do a digital audit of what's available about you online, and delete anything that doesn't match who you are today and how you want to be perceived by others, so that the risk of people having the wrong impression about you is minimized.
And I think that is a golden nugget that everybody needs to take to heart, especially in their communication in a public setting. So you might represent yourself well in a picture, right? You'd have a professional picture. You might yourself on a LinkedIn profile or something similar very well. But if you now go into, I'll age myself a little, on Facebook or X or other platforms, and start rambling off on things that are very controversial, that is again tarnishing trust and tarnishing your personal reputation. Be very, very mindful. And I love when you say you just delete it. Well, we all know in the world of the internet, you might delete it, but it's always somewhere. So be very mindful. And that's the advice I gave to my kids. You never know where you end up at, but be mindful of every word that you say, because it is somewhere to be found. So let me ask you a question, and if there is distrust and somebody, how can you re-establish trust, or how would you manage that part?
Yes. So when there is distrust, the key is knowing where that distrust is coming from. So distrust is usually people having their own ideas about what your intention is, right? So say, for example, if I could give an example, you hold a presentation and a colleague approaches you after you've given the presentation and they tell you, look, this presentation wasn't any good. Let me give you some advice on how you can do better next time. Whether or not you react positively to that comment is what your interpretation is of that person's intention. Are they your friend or are they your enemy? If they're your friend and you know they have a positive intention towards you, then you're going to say, oh man, I'm so happy that you say that. And yes, of course, I'm all ears. Please tell me, right? Whereas if you see them as an enemy who maybe is jealous that you got to present and they didn't get to present, or you got promoted, they didn't get promoted, or whatever it may be, then you're going to be a little bit more defensive and say, hey, what do you know? No, I'm fine, right? So the reason why there's distrust is often because the person misinterprets your intention or believes that you have a negative intention. So then when you want to reestablish trust, you need to work on what their perception is of your intention. And a very simple way of doing that is you invite them for a meeting and you say, look, my intention for this meeting is to work out with you how we can collaborate better. Right? You make it positive. You let them know right from the beginning, I have a positive intention. I want to work together with you a lot better than we have done in the past. And I have a good example of a client who did that recently, actually. She had a colleague who was bad-mouthing her and her team behind her back. So she was in supply chain and he was in sales. And the relationship between supply chain and sales is never perfect. So he was unhappy with how her team was dealing with things, but he wasn't talking to her directly. He was just going around the office, bad-mouthing her. And it was affecting her team's reputation. So she realized, I have to speak to that person. That's not the word she used. She was very angry with him. So we went through my framework, and the first thing she had to do is let go of her grudges against him, right? And there's a process that I take clients through that then helps her be neutral in the meeting, so that there's no misunderstanding about her positive intention, because she had a positive intention. She really did want to collaborate better with him. So she then invited him to the meeting with a positive intention. Let's see what we can do to collaborate better together. She restated that positive intention at the beginning of the meeting, knowing that he didn't really trust her, right? And she also hadn't really trusted him before, but we did the inner work for her to help her let go of the grudges. And she said, look, I know, or I've heard that you are saying ABC to other people in the company. And I want to make sure that, the message that I heard is the message that you said. And if that's true, then let's work it out, because I want to collaborate with you. And she knew that if ever he was going to get defensive and say, oh, no, I didn't say that, etc., she had some things that she knew to do to help him calm down and have an open conversation. And something beautiful happened. He trusted her enough to have the open conversation with her. And he said, yes, I was being emotional. I'm sorry that I badmouthed you. I didn't really mean it like that. But here's the things that, I want to sort out with you. And then hopefully we can work through. So it turned out a little bit of a ranting session for him. But at least they talked, and now they can continue the dialogue over the next few months to hopefully, over time, trust each other more and work better together. Not just individually, but also the sales and the supply chain teams work better together, so that they can be happier if that's a word. I know you like that word. And they can be happy, or at least they can collaborate better. And eventually, I mean, ultimately, everybody wants to earn more money. So if the business makes more money, then hopefully it will trigger through to the individuals. We'll all make more money and we'll have more fun doing it.
Yeah, I think it's so critically important. So I use a simple equation of high performance equals the function of trust multiplied against engagement. So these two teams can be engaging with each other, but if there's no trust, you can't get performance. And it's exactly the formula you're trying to apply in this conversation. It's the same as trying to build meaningful partnerships, which is very different than having a relationship with somebody. I think you also pointed out something that I use in more in the sense that upper brain, lower brain, right? When he came into the room, and he could have very easily taken this as an accusation,
Mm.
put that low brain fight or flight mode, at which time everything else shuts down. He becomes very defensive, and nothing else happens, right? So if you're going into those types of conversations, it is so critically important that both of you stay in upper brain. So let's say things would have been slightly different, and he would have he would have been in that lower brain activity. What would you suggest they do at that point of time before continuing the conversation? Because you can talk all day long to a person who's in lower brain, but they won't hear a
Yeah.
word you say.
No, I mean, a person who's a lower brain is like a toddler throwing their toys out of the pram, right?
Let's see.
If you're a parent, you know there's no
Yeah.
point even trying to talk to them. You just, the first objective is to help them calm down. So the question is, how do you calm somebody down where you're getting the early warning signs that they're about to throw their toys out of the pram during the meeting, right? So the first thing is you have to be a very good observer. You have to be able to see the person heating up, going into their lower brain, as you call it, and catch them there before they get too heated up. And the way to do that is simply restate your positive intention that you already had in the invitation for the meeting and you already stated at the beginning of the meeting. My positive intention here is that I want us to work out how we can collaborate better together. Then you can make that even stronger. If you know what the person is, what is triggering the person. So say, for example, they're feeling attacked. You notice that they're becoming more defensive. You can say, look, I'm really sorry if you have the impression that I might be attacking you. My intention is definitely not to attack you. My intention is to work together with you so we can work out a compromise.
It is amazing that words, right, how impactful they can be. And I always say, if that doesn't work, then let's go for a walk. Let's leave the room, let's go for a walk. Let's go have a cup of coffee. And let's come back in 15 minutes when we start the conversation again. It is because again, you can talk all you want to a lower brain activity, but this is not going to work. So you reference a framework. Tell us where we can find your framework or the work that you're doing.
Yes, so my framework is called Influence Under Pressure. So it helps individuals who are exposed to very high pressure environments to still build relationships and trust in these high pressure moments. So because I've had 10,000 conversations with very skeptical investors in high pressure situations, I've accompanied CEOs and CFOs when they went public with their company and issued shares for the first time on the market. So those are all very high pressure situations, and it's when your nervous system gets triggered and you go into the lower brain, as you call it. So what I help people do is reverse engineer a relaxed state in their body so that they can be fully present, they can be human, and they can stay themselves and have access to their thinking power even in very stressful situations, and they can smile with their mouth and their eyes, as you say, even when there's maximum stress. That's actually possible if you know how to do it. So that's the first thing that we work out in the framework. And then we talk about building trust with the right people in the right way. And we talk about the messaging, different types of messaging to different people in the hierarchy. You talk differently to your team, then you talk to the CEO, then you talk to investors. So it's about getting to know your audience as well, and targeting your message to each individual that you meet. So that's the framework. It's called Influence Under Pressure, and you can find it on my website and you can find it on LinkedIn as well.
Okay. And your website is biancariemer.com?
That's
Or
it.
is it something?
Absolutely.
Hey, I trust you. I think that
That's amazing.
we had a wonderful relationship of a conversation today. I always say this: if I can relate to somebody in my brain in our conversations, I think that also builds trust between people. If I'm sitting here, I'm trying to compare myself to you. I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I'm wiser, I'm smarter. That really disrupts that whole flow of building trust between two people. So, thank you very much for a great conversation. Give me a parting thought.
Yeah, so the parting thought is when you're trying to build trust with somebody, try to understand them and see the world through their eyes.
I think that is wonderful advice. Anything else?
That's it. And then you
Okay,
know how to talk to them.
excellent. Very good. Well, I encourage everybody because, again, trust cannot be underestimated. This is something that everybody needs to learn and to work on. This is about having really meaningful conversations with everybody in life, at home and at work. So visit her website, biancariemer.com, or visit her on LinkedIn, pick up a copy of her book. And again, make sure that you work on your trust 15 minutes a day, because that's something that's critically important. Go to the Apple Store, download the Dutch Mentor app. The episode will be in there. There will be more work that you can do in other areas around building trust and meaningful, deep partnerships that leads to the outcomes that you desire. Again, without action, none of it matters. Right? You have to take an action coming out of this conversation because otherwise it will be forgotten in just a few hours. Thank you. We'll see you in the next episode. Bianca, thank you very much for being here today and have a wonderful evening.
Thanks. Same to you. Thank you.